Hiraku's new house is finally finished. The girls take him on a tour, showing him around the house and his room. Hiraku notices a room with a bolt lock and wonders what's inside. When he opens it and sees a bed for two, he quickly closes it, pretending he didn't see it. The next day, Hiraku decides to try making a dish he hasn't made before, curry. He takes the girls to a section of his crops where they see lots of unfamiliar plants. He explains that some of them won't grow in areas with any snowfall, but thanks to a special tool, he can grow them here. He gathers spices for the curry, starting with cumin, then turmeric, which gives the curry its color, and coriander seeds, which need to be ground into powder. He also takes some cilantro leaves, which the girls notice and decide to research because of their strong smell. Hiraku then gathers black pepper and cayenne peppers. With all the spices gathered, Hiraku starts cooking, only to find that only Lee is there. She explains that Rue and Tia are busy researching how to create a powerful protection talisman. Hiraku begins by heating rapeseed oil and adding rabbit meat. While that cooks, he grinds all the spices except for the cumin. Once the meat has some color, he removes it to avoid overcooking, then cooks the cumin with the leftover bits and juices. He adds diced onions, ginger, and garlic, then tomatoes, sauteing everything until it turns into a paste. He adds the ground spices and some salt, then adds the meat and boiled soybeans with water. As it cooks, Hiraku suddenly realizes he forgot something: naan. He explains it's made like regular bread up until the part where it's left to rise, then they roll the dough with a rolling pin. The girls return just as Hiraku finishes cooking, and they all sit down to eat. Hiraku explains how to eat the naan with the curry, and the girls enjoy it enough to ask for seconds. Rue and Tia offer some curry to the dogs, but they run away upon smelling it. With winter approaching, Hiraku prepares by gathering firewood. He knows Zabuton will go into hibernation, so he asks him in advance to make some extra blankets. Hiraku has Rue and Tia preserve some meat by smoking and drying it, especially since the dogs won't be able to hunt much during the winter. He's also working on a way to preserve vegetables and creates a box with 2 floors. Vegetables go on the top floor and are covered in a blanket and snow, while any water from the snow gathers on the bottom floor, keeping the vegetables dry. Seeing the girls use magic, Hiraku wishes he could too, but he's glad they're around as they've helped him a lot since he's only capable of gardening and cooking. Rue says he's amazing for being able to live for so long in this forest. During winter, they stay indoors more, so Hiraku decides to make some board games like Reversi, chess, and a mahjong set. He explains Reversi and its rules to the girls. Rue finds the rules simple and wonders if it will be fun, but Tia says it allows for complicated strategies. Hiraku compliments Tia for realizing it, annoying Rue, who then challenges Tia. As they play, Tia is winning, but Rue flips the board, pretending it was an accident. They decide to start again, but Tia uses magic to restore the board exactly as it was. Rue tries again, but Tia restores it again. They agree to best 2 out of 3, and Hiraku checks on the other girls, noticing Kuro giving advice on moving a piece. He's surprised to see other dogs playing chess and decides never to challenge them to a game after feeling an odd energy from them. Rue decides to play with the dogs, but she loses and doesn't flip the table, afraid of Kuro. Hiraku then plays mahjong with Kuro, Tia, and Lee, but despite thinking Kuro wouldn't understand the rules so quickly, he loses badly, with Kuro winning. Feeling down, Hiraku decides to make a mini bowling game. Since Rue wonders why they need to knock down the pins, he names them as some bad guys. As they play games each day, winter passes quickly and spring comes. One morning, Zabuton alerts them to something big coming from the sky. Hiraku guesses it's a dragon, but Tia corrects him, it's a wyvern. The wyvern attacks Hiraku's group, breathing fire, but Rue and Tia use magic to defend themselves. The fire spreads into the crops, but the elves quickly put it out. Hiraku wonders what to do and how to stop the wyvern. He summons a powerful tool which surprises him by turning into a spear. He throws it at the wyvern, who creates a 3-layer barrier, but the spear pierces it and injures its wing. He throws it again, piercing its chest and killing it. Hiraku wonders if it's common to encounter wyverns, but Rue explains they are rare creatures. Hiroku then wonders if someone could have sent it, but Tia explains that even if that were the case, the person wouldn't have sent it alone since it's a valuable creature. Hiraku then assumes it was just a fortunate encounter. He then wonders if they can eat it, and the girls explain it's considered a delicacy. Hiraku cooks 3 dishes with the wyvern meat and all the girls enjoy it. Rue asks Tia if she could have blocked Hiraku's spear, but Tia, seeing that the wyvern wasn't able to stop it, says she wouldn't have been able to either. Rue guesses it was luck that they first met the dogs and not Hiraku. At the demonic kingdom of Galgardo, in the demon lord's castle, the great generals receive a report that a wyvern was defeated. Randon can't believe it, as when one gets close to their territory, they usually mobilize their entire military force. Beazle states the wyvern was attacked from the ground and killed in 2 hits. Randon fears they won't be able to fight someone that powerful. Beazle reminds them they are the 4 generals, and they need to handle the situation before fear spreads. Randon then suggests they should resign, but Beazle tries to dissuade him. At Gatekeeper Dragons, in Drime's lair, Dorium, a blue dragon, asks Gucci if he saw the fight, and Gucci confirms it. Dorium wonders what would happen if he took a spear attack, and Gucci guesses it would likely pierce cleanly through him. Dorium ponders what to do, and Gucci notes it would be foolish to attack. Hiraku enjoys the wyvern meat but feels something is missing and decides to finally make some alcohol. He realizes wine exists in this world and decides to make it from grapes. The girls are excited, and they quickly harvest the grapes. Hiraku then creates a place to ferment the grapes and asks the girls to stomp on them. Initially feeling a bit weird, they find it easier with some sort of rhythm. The elves suggest a song from their village and start singing. They fill several barrels, and Hiraku decides to let the yeast on the skin of the grapes ferment it for them. Hiraku wonders if they made too much, but hearing that the girls will drink it in no time, he wonders if he made too little. Meanwhile, the god observes Hiraku and wonders if this is enough for him to forgive him, but the goddess of agriculture tells him it isn't, as he punished an innocent soul and, while trying to save it, ended up sending him to the forest of death. The goddess can't believe that he also gave him a replica of the Holy Lance Grime. God explains that he is only using it as a farming tool and he got permission. However, the goddess states he didn't tell her he was giving it to a human, which should drain all of their life force and kill them instantly. God states he is fine as he gave him a super healthy body and he must have fast recovery. The goddess states he was just being careless. She is also angry that the god statues that Hiraku made, she appears like an old man. God tries to say it's not his fault, but she doesn't want to listen and punishes him to sit for 300 years. Zabuton signals Hiraku and he sees that the dogs and spiders had caught another girl. Rue sees it's her younger sister, Flora. As they take her to the village, Flora explains that she heard the angel was after her and she followed her to the forest. Hiraku suggests that she stays there for a while to rest. Flora accepts but feels strange that Hiraku is Rue's husband. Rue explains that he is the master of the Inferno Wolves and also took down a wyvern. Hearing that, Flora quickly apologizes. Hiraku realizes that Kuro isn't a dog but a wolf and wonders about the Inferno part. Kuro then breathes fire, and Hiraku is impressed. Rue and Tia are surprised he didn't know, as they are well-known beasts, and they live quite a long time with him. Hiraku prepares some food for Flora, who ends up enjoying it. He shares that he really wants to make some miso and soy sauce, and as Flora doesn't know what that is, he explains that they are made from fermented soybeans. As Flora wonders what is fermented, he explains how cheese and wine are made. Hearing about the microorganisms, Flora is excited for a new subject she could research. After a few days, Flora leaves, but in a month she returns to live there and has brought her maids as well. Anne speaks on behalf of all the maids and tells Hiraku that he can use them as he wants. Hiraku sees that Flora has brought 2 cows as well and gets excited that they can make butter and cheese now. Tia realizes that the vampires, elves, wolves, and spiders are all large groups now, but she is alone. She tells Hiraku that she will leave for a while and flies away. Tia returns soon and has brought her underlings, 3 angels, Grand Maria, Koodle, and Korum, some lizardmen represented by Dogga and a chicken. With the arrival of the maids, who are a race of ogres, all of the chores start to get done a lot faster. Hiraku notices that they don't cook any complicated dishes and decides to teach them all the cooking methods he knows. That ends up interesting the ogres, who then start cooking. The 3 angels that Tia brought are instructed by Tia to patrol the forest. Hiraku wondered why they appeared with armors, but realizes that Tia planned to have them as security after the appearance of the wyvern. The lizardmen are in charge of all the labor that requires strength outdoors, and thanks to them, their construction work is moving faster than before. Hiraku makes Dogga wear a scarf around his arm, as he isn't able to tell them apart. Hiraku realizes that their numbers had increased a lot. Lee then comes and tells him that she brought all the elves she found in the forest. Hiraku then sees another large group of elves, but notices that they are all female. He wonders about the male elves and Lee explains that the men didn't survive. However, they intend to make many. Hiraku is happy for them but decides not to ask how they intend to do that. Several days later, Hiraku calls all the representatives to talk with them and asks them how to name the village. Rue suggests they name it after Hiraku, but Hiraku doesn't like the sound of it. Anne suggests they name it after the forest, but hearing the forest is called the Forest of Death, Hiraku feels that's a scary name. Zabuton then points at the door, and as Hiraku opens it, he sees the Great Tree and decides to name it the Great Tree Village. That evening, he announces the village name to everyone and explains they will be having a party to celebrate it. Everyone starts calling Hiraku their mayor. Hiraku states they need to decide that later together, but the girls tell him that everyone is already calling him that. The village then celebrates by drinking the first batch of wine they made. Hiraku has just become the mayor of the Great Tree Village, but his daily routine remains largely the same. Then, one day, a messenger from the demonic kingdom arrives. Beezle, the messenger, requests to speak with the village leader, and Hiraku steps forward. Beezle presents a gift to Hiraku and explains that the demon lord wishes to discuss the status of the settlement. Hiraku recalls that the land was under the protection of the demon lord and wonders if they will demand taxes or even evict them. Hiraku suggests to Beezle that if the demon lord allows them to stay, they'll pay a portion of their harvest as tax, proposing 10%. Hiraku worries it might be too low, but Beezle agrees to it. They agree that the tax will be collected each year before winter. With this, a contract is signed. Hiraku's village will pay 10% of their crop yield, but exempting milk, eggs, honey, and alcohol. If the demonic kingdom is interested in these products, they can trade for them. Hiraku feels he might have been too assertive in negotiations and gives Beezle a gift in return. After Beezle leaves, the girls praise Hiraku for his negotiation, but mention that usually taxes run between 50% to 60%. They also appreciate that collecting the tax forces the demonic kingdom to officially recognize their residency. Having the protection of the demon lord is seen as a significant advantage. Rue is particularly excited about the gift they received from Beezle, an all-purpose medicine. Beezle reports to the other 4 generals, surprising them with news that the village is submitting to them despite being able to defeat a wyvern. Randon wonders if there's an ulterior motive. Beezle shares the same concern, explaining he had to accept the conditions as the vampire princess and the angel of annihilation were present, along with an army of high elves, a pack of inferno wolves, and a trio of killer angels. If they hadn't accepted, they would have become enemies of the demonic kingdom. Gratz notices they received a gift as well and decides to inspect it in case it's dangerous. Inside, he finds fruits resembling apples but with better shape and color. Beezle notices the cloth in which the apples were wrapped is made by a great demon spider. Gratz is surprised, as great demon spiders once fought previous demon lords to a standstill. Dorame, the true ruler of the dragons, also visits the village. Gucci presents a gift and explains that Dorame's lair is located to the south. Though it's a considerable distance, they consider themselves neighbors and came to greet them. Hiraku is surprised by Dorame's repeated bowing, and Gucci explains that Dorame is too large to enter buildings. Gucci asks Dorame to take on a smaller form, and he transforms into a human. After enjoying some food and drink, Dorame expresses a desire to stay and live in the village, but Gucci reminds him of his duty to protect his domain and warns he might be a nuisance to the villagers if he stays too long. After these visits, Hiraku decides to build a guest house to better accommodate visitors. Initially proposing a small house, the girls suggest a larger one, considering visitors usually come in large groups. They start construction on the guest house. Hiraku also plans a more proper way to welcome guests. Currently, the angels find visitors, capture them, and bring them to the village entrance. Additionally, when Zabuton sounds the alarm, everyone arms themselves. Hiraku devises a new signal for visitors, giving Zabuton a bell to ring. He wants to greet visitors with Rue and Tia, but the idea is rejected, and he's forced to include elves, oni maids, and lizardmen. Soon, Garf and a few beastmen from the Howling Village arrive as guests, seeking to establish a relationship with Hiraku's village. Rue handles the situation and asks if that's all of them. Garf confirms, and Rue explains they'll consider anyone else an enemy. The Inferno Wolves bring more men from Garf's group, and he apologizes. Rue instructs them to behave and invites them into the village. Once in the guest house, they're locked in. Tia explains that all previous guests brought presents, and though they're unsure if these guests are enemies, they're not following normal procedures and won't be treated as regular visitors. The girls are against offering fancy food or alcohol, but Hiraku convinces them to provide some alcohol. While the beastmen eat and drink, Hiraku asks them how they learned about the village. Garf explains they heard from the Demon Lord's men. In the Howling Village, they make a living by hunting or mining and used to trade with human villages. However, recent troubles made trading with humans unstable, so they look for new trading partners. Tia asks why some of them remained hidden, and one explains they would report back if something happened. The next day, Garf proposes trading and having an open market, but since it's difficult for them to come to the village with goods, he suggests Hiraku come to their village, assuming he can navigate the forest easily. Hiraku agrees and decides to use wolves to pull a cart with goods for the first trade. Garf brings items made from the ores they mined and asks for food in return. Hiraku agrees and brings the available food for trade. Before leaving, Garf admits they didn't know about the custom of bringing gifts but promises to bring one next time, though it won't be fancy. Hiraku assures him it's the thought that counts. Time passes, and Hiraku decides it's time to trade with the Howling Village. The girls don't allow him to leave, so Tia goes with some lizardmen. Normally, the trip would take 10 days, but Dorame agrees to transport them faster in exchange for a barrel of wine. Since his first visit, Dorame regularly brings treasures or weapons as gifts, so no one minds. A few days later, Tia returns with a sad Dorame. She explains that when the beastmen saw them with the dragon, they were shocked and initially refused to accept anything, but after some free samples, they loved the goods and traded everything, even the barrel of wine meant for Doraemon. Hiraku tells Doraemon he can have more wine at dinner, lifting his spirits. Tia reveals that the mayor of the Howling Village asked if some of their people could come and live in Hiraku's village. Hiraku agrees, though he requested 2 young men as well. The female beastmen arrive, and Sina introduces herself. She expresses gratitude for being accepted and says they are prepared to be used as Hiraku sees fit, but asks not to be abandoned. Hiraku tells them to take their time getting used to the place and assures them they won't be kicked out. Sina reveals they brought 3 young men, which turn out to be boys. Hiraku is surprised but realizes they might contribute to the village's future in 5 or 10 years. Initially, the beastmen feared they would be treated poorly, but as it turned out, they quickly adjusted to village life. Hiraku noticed Sina's use of magic and assumed everyone could use it except him. She tried to comfort him, explaining that beastmen children couldn't use magic yet, but they could learn together. Hiraku, however, knew that one day they would easily surpass him. While harvesting apples, Hiraku heard noise near the village and felt the ground shake. Gran Maria quickly reported a grappling bear and a bloody viper fighting in the northern forest. Hiraku wondered if they could eat the bear meat and convinced Gran Maria to take him to see the monsters. Despite Gran Maria's suggestion to plan first, Hiraku insisted she drop him off. Alone, he attacked and swiftly killed the monsters. The killer angels praised his feat. Hiraku then decided to cook the bear with wine, making wine braised bear dish, but found it quite gamey. The girls were shocked that he used their precious wine, but he explained that cooking with wine was normal. He fried the viper and enjoyed it more as it tasted like fried chicken. Since the viper tasted like chicken, Hiraku wanted to try something. He went to Flora and asked her if she had something like an antibacterial agent. He explained that he needed something that could kill microorganisms and prevent stomach aches or illness. Flora offered him a potion, explaining that it would blow up everything. Hiraku asked for something weaker and she gave him another potion. Hiraku also wondered how the miso production was coming along, and Flora explained that she had made no progress. She had followed his instructions, but she didn't notice any fermentation and the potion she used had blown up her house 3 times already. Hiraku suggested they try again. The next day, Hiraku gathered some chicken eggs. He then added salt and vinegar. After mixing it, he added some oil and got mayonnaise, which would go perfectly with the fried viper. Hiraku then proceeded with the miso, starting by simmering the soybeans he and Flora had soaked in water. Next, they ground them and he used the almighty tool to add koji mold. They formed balls and packed them into barrels to leave for a few months. Ru then called Hiraku, informing him they had visitors. The visitors were a few elder dwarfs led by Donovan, who had heard that they had high-quality alcohol and wished to share some with them. The girls explained that they couldn't give it for free. Donovan stated they didn't have money, but they had technology. They had spent their lives studying alcohol production and seeing the fine crops they had, they could help turn them into fine alcohol. Hearing that, the girls quickly agreed. The dwarfs then used distillation and made corn whiskey. Eventually, Donovan and his men remained in the village and worked as the village brewers. Later, the village had a welcoming celebration for the beastmen and dwarfs. Hiraku realized that finally some men had joined and asked Donovan if any girl caught his eye. Donovan then explained that the girls were too young for him and if they couldn't grow a beard, they were not for him. One day, Hiraku saw a dragon approaching. As it didn't look peaceful, he prepared for a fight. Doraemon then showed up and stopped the dragon. As the 2 dragons stared at each other, a third, scarier one appeared. Hiraku then threw his spear, but the dragon managed to dodge at the last moment. Gutchai then stopped Hiraku, explaining that they were not enemies and were not fighting. As the dragons landed and transformed into human forms, Gutchai explained that the 2 others were Doraemon's wife, Grafaloon, and daughter, Lastest. As Doraemon constantly sneaked out to come to the village, his wife and daughter thought he might be cheating, as he always took something from the treasury and returned in the morning. Hiraku had built Doraemon a house there so that he didn't need to go home drunk, but he guessed that was a bad idea now. Doraemon tried to explain that this was all high-level politics, but the women were sure he was hiding something. Doraemon explained that he had no courage for an affair and the women agreed. Hiraku apologized for earlier, but Doraemon made his family apologize as well. Lastest then apologized for almost burning the village down, and Grafaloon apologized for the thought of obliterating the man who had pointed a spear at her daughter. Hiraku was glad that things were sorted out and left. Doraemon then asked his wife and daughter if they understood what he was doing and Grafaloon confirmed, noting that while they had small numbers, they had the power to challenge them, which was something she hadn't expected to see. Lastest also noted that Grafaloon couldn't defend against that attack and had to avoid it. Grafaloon explained that was mainly thanks to the spider who had pulled her out and was an old friend of hers. If he hadn't pulled her out, she wouldn't have been alive. Grafaloon then told Lastest to live in this village and make sure that this power was never turned against them. Hiraku agreed with Lastamoon living there and she quickly started helping them with the work. However, as she was a dragon and was too strong, she would often break anything she touched. Hiraku wondered what to do with her as Dorame had asked him to give her some work. He then noticed that the wolves were scared and Tia stated it wasn't just the wolves, but the chickens and cows as well. She explained that the dragons weren't just powerful, but they had wisdom and knowledge too. Hiraku then got an idea and sent Lastamoon to handle the diplomatic relations with Beezle, who was shocked to see a dragon. She wondered what he wanted and Beezle barely explained that he wanted more fruits like the ones they got last time. Lastamoon stated that they were low on oranges, but they had strawberries. Scared, Beezle decided to take 10 boxes. She also suggested some apples, pears, persimmons, and watermelons, and Beezle took them too. Beezle reported back that they now had a dragon. While it might be risky, they decided to send a spy. Beezle called his daughter, Florum, and explained that he wanted her to investigate the village's military might. Florum went to the village and was welcomed by Lastamoon, who took her around. However, while showing her around, Lastamoon was informed they had spotted a messenger from Howling Village and she decided to leave Florum to look around by herself. Florum then went around and saw all the races. Normally, she would expect Lastamoon to command them all, but she had heard that there was someone above her who ruled everyone. She ended up seeing Hiraku, but as he was just a human, she ignored him. After meeting up with Lastamoon again, she explained that Hiraku was the mayor. Florum couldn't believe a human was commanding them all, but Lastamoon explained that he was strong enough to defeat her mother. Florum then started to worry as not only she didn't say hello, she was quite rude to him. Hiraku heard that Florum was Beezle's daughter and that she would be staying for a while. He saw that she was getting along with Lastamoon, but the moment he showed up, Florum started acting quite stiff and awkward.